Hey guys, welcome back to another Mathin' with Coach Lynn. Today we're going to find the percent of a number. This is lesson 2.4 in our Tennessee Reveal math book. And the I can statement states that I can find the percent of a number by reasoning about percent as a rate per 100 and by using bar diagrams, ratio tables, equivalent ratios, and double number lines. We're going to start on page 111. Down in the middle of the page at our Learn, it says find the percent of a number. 50 people were surveyed and asked to vote for their favorite flavor of sherbet. The results are shown in the table. So the results show us that 20% preferred lemon, 26% preferred orange, 14% preferred peach, and 40% preferred watermelon. Method 1 of finding out how much each percent accounts for of the 50 people is using a bar diagram. So we're going to see in the bar diagram that we're going to try to find how many people chose lemon as their favorite flavor. So we know that the bar represents 100%. Since lemon was 20% of the people, we can cut our bar into 10% sections. So that will be 10 sections that each represent 10%. Now, the total people surveyed was 50 people. So 100% is all 50. 0 would be no people. So we need to divide our 10 boxes by the 50 people. So each box is 5 people. So one box is 10%, which is 5 people. And since lemon was 20%, we need to look at 2 boxes, which is 20%. So 10 people prefer lemon sherbet. Another way to look at this is method 2, using a ratio table. In the ratio table, we know 100% is all 50 people that were surveyed. We want to know how many people is the 20% that like lemon. 100 divided by 5 gives us 20. 50 divided by 5 is 10. So 20% is 10 people who prefer lemon. Method 3, which is my personal favorite way to do it, and I think this makes more sense because we know that percent means per 100, so we want to set up our percents over 100, where method 2 has them side by side, and that's not what we've really been talking about with percents as we've gone through module 2. So in method 3, we know 20% is 20 over 100. 100 is my whole, because 100% is all of whatever we're talking about. Since we're talking about people that are surveyed, we know that our whole is 50, so we're going to put them on the same spot, both in the denominator. So we need to find the 20%, which is our part of our whole. So 100 divided by 2 is 50. 20 divided by 2 is 10. So 10 of the 50 people prefer lemon. On page 113, we begin example 1, finding the percent of a number. The graph shows the type of snacks that students at York Middle School bring with them to school. Suppose there are 300 students at the school. How many of them bring cheese for a snack? We know our whole pie here represents 100%, which is our whole. And they tell us that there's 300 students at this school, which is also our whole. So 100% is the same as 300 students. They ask us how many of them bring cheese as a snack. Well, we see that 15% bring cheese. So 15 is a part of my pie here. So we know that's 15% is also written as 15 per 100. My part to my whole. Since my whole 100% is the 300 students, in my equivalent fraction, I'm going to write 300 as my denominator down at my whole. I need to find the part, which is my 15%. So So I'm going to look at 100 times what will get me to 300? 100 times 3. So I'm going to do 15 times 3, and I get 45. So I have 45 out of the 300 students brought cheese for a snack. It's important to remember here that this is not 45%. This is 45 students. We know that percent is per 100, and in this case it's 50 per 100, so 15% of them brought cheese. And over here we have 45 per 300, so it's not a percent. It's 45 of the students out of 300 students brought cheese as a snack. Now let's look down at our check problem on the bottom of the page. It says approximately 11% of the U.S. population is left-handed. I'm one of those. If there are 700 students at a middle school, about how many of them are expected to be left-handed? Well, the first thing we got to do is write our 11% as a fraction. So we got 11%, which is 11 per 100. And they tell us there are 700 students in the middle school. Well, that's a whole school, so we know that's the whole amount. So it needs to be the denominator of our equivalent fraction. So 100 times 7 gives us 700. So we're going to do 11 times 7, and we'll get 77. So 77 out of the 700 students are left-handed. We write this as 77 students and not as 77%, because it's not 77 per 100. We're talking about the students now and not the percent. In example 2 on page 114, they say, what is 30% of 240? Now this one can be a little trickier because they're not giving us a scenario like in example 1. They're just asking us what is 30% of 240. But since they worded it this way, it's of 240. I know that 240 is my whole, and 30% we know is a part, because 30% is part of 100%. So I need to figure out what is the part of 240. I can set it up like they did in method 1 with a bar diagram. Since we're going for 30%, we can do intervals of 10%. So our whole bar is 100%. Each individual box represents 10%. So 3 boxes would be 30%. My whole is 240. So my whole bar represents 240. I'm going to divide it by 10 since I have 10 boxes. So each box is 24. So 3 boxes is 30%. 24 times 3 gives me 72. The other way we can do it with our equivalent ratios, equivalent fraction way, is 30% is 30 per 100. And I want to know what 30% is of 240. Since it said 30% of 240, 240 is my whole. So I'm going to put it as my denominator. Now I need to figure out 100 times what is 24. I may not be able to figure this out off the top of my head. So if I'm going to multiply to convert, the easiest way for me to do this, the complete circle, is draw an arrow back from 240 to 100. And I know from go from 240 to 100, I'm going to do the opposite of what I'm going to do down here. I'm going to divide. So 240 divided by 100 will give me my answer, and I will get 2.4. So 240 divided by 100 is 2.4. So 100 times 2.4 is 240. Whatever I do the bottom, I need to do the top. So 30 times 2.4, and we will get 72. So 72 is 30% of 240. The bottom of the page in the check problem, it asks us what is 70% of 580, and it tells us to use any strategy we want. So anything you've learned so far, whether it be the bar method or the equivalent ratios, the ratio tables, or if you like the double number line, use whatever you like. I'm going to use equivalent ratios. So I know 70% is the same as 70 over 100, because 70 per 100. And I'm finding 70% of 580. So of 580 tells me it's my whole. So my equivalent ratio, I'll put 580 as my denominator. So now I need to look at 100 times what number will get me to 580. If I can't figure that out, I can do 580 divided by 100, which will give me 5.8. So I know I'm going to multiply by 5.8. So 70 times 5.8 to find my part of 580, which will give me 406. So 406 is 70% of 580. Now let's look at our practice page on page 119. We're going to use any strategy to solve each problem. Number 1 says the graph shows the career interest of the students at Linda's school. Suppose there are 400 students at the school. How many of them want to be an athlete? We know our whole pie here represents 100%. And they told us in our word problem that the whole school is 400 students, so 100% is 400 students. And they want to know how many want to be an athlete. Well, 12% want to be an athlete. We know 12% is 12 per 100. And we know that there are 400 students in the whole school, and we said that 100% is the same as our 400 students. So in our equivalent ratio, we need to have 400 as our denominator. Now we look at 100 times what will get me to 400. That is times 4. So 12 times 4 is 48. So 48 of my 400 students want to be an athlete. Let's look at number 3. 15% of 240. So 15% is 15 over 100, 15 per 100, 15% of 240. So 240 is our whole. So we put it as our denominator. 100 times what will get me to 240? Well, I can do 240 divided by 100, and I get 2.4. Since I'm going from a smaller number to a larger number, I will multiply 100 times 2.4. So I will do 15 times 2.4, and I get 36. So 36 is 15% of 15. Let's look at number 6. Number 6 says 150% of 44. Well, 150% is 150 per 100 of 44. So 44 is our whole. So 100% is the same as 44. Now we need to figure out what 150% is. So for me to go from 100 to 44, I can multiply by 0.44. So I will do the same to the top. 0.44 times 150, and that gets me 66. So 66 is 150% of 44. And like we said earlier, we know this will be higher than our number because 150% is greater than 100%. Let's look at one more. Let's look at number 7. It tells us 0.15% of 350. Well, 0.15% is 0.15 per 100 of 350. So 350 is my whole. I'm going to look at and see what goes 100 to 350. 100 times 3.5 will give me 350. So I will do 0.15 times 3.5, and I get 0.525. So 0.525 is 0.15% of 350. Hopefully the strategies we use today throughout this lesson will be beneficial for you. You'll be able to take them and apply them and ace all your assignments. Have a great day.